Although not predicting another real estate boom like the one experienced in the early 80s, those in the industry say there are similar indicators. With low interest rates helping to create ideal conditions for home loan affordability, current movement in Newcastle and the Hunter is following a statewide trend.
There's a build-up of confidence, and that's really all the market ever lacks.
The Real Estate Institute of Australia reports investment is up from 27% last November to 36%. And with the median price for an average house at $120,000, there's a healthy increase in the number of first home buyers.
Pretty anxious to get in the marketplace at all times, but when their jobs look good, when interest rates are low, when home loan affordability is as high as it is, then yes, they make that move.
Despite a recent glut, rental availability has dropped slightly, and last year's surge of duplex and villa development has paid off for some investors.
A lot of those have now been sold to investors, been used up. I can see more of them coming as well. The confidence is there. There's an increase above inflation in real estate. I couldn't see why it wouldn't continue to go that way.
Many organisations provided equipment and personnel to fight the bushfires last summer. Among those, the Soil Conservation Service, a government body whose fleet of bulldozers and tractors is often called on during such an emergency. Shadow Lands Minister Bob Martin claims that regional directors of the service have been told to tell firefighting organisations that payment will be required before personnel and equipment are committed.
I have a document here dated the 11th of January, at the height of the bushfire crisis, which says that no one will be allowed to fight a fire or take a tractor or a bulldozer from the Soil Conservation Service unless it is paid for by those people who are requiring that assistance.
The memo says budget restraints have meant the Soil Conservation Service can no longer afford to fund equipment and staff for firefighting.
I think it really shows how terrible a government can be when it puts out this sort of document. At the same time, employers are being asked to pay for workers who go out and fight fires, and the volunteers go out voluntarily to protect life and property.
However, Land Minister George Souris says no private landholder would ever receive a bill for work undertaken on their property during a bushfire emergency.
No one will ever be sent a bill. The issue only relates to intergovernmental charges between the government departments, between the Bushfire Council and perhaps even the insurance companies, but has no relevance whatsoever to any private individual. No one will get a bill from the Soil Conservation Service.
The teams had to battle bitterly cold and windy conditions in the early rounds of the competition. This made every tackle hurt that much more, although there aren't that many made in this abbreviated version of the game. Attacking football is the appeal of Sevens, with the teams from all over the Upper Hunter not letting their supporters down. The 32 teams are divided into 8 pools, with the winner of each going on to the finals. Malabula, in the predominantly white colours, was favoured to take the title after winning the competition last year. It lived up to that form early, with an easy win against the Raymond Terrace reserves. But the addition of sides from the Maitland Coalfields competition would make it hard to get back-to-back titles. Despite the new teams, Malabula still made the grand final and proved last year was no fluke, beating Swansea 38 points to 30. More than 5,000 people were surveyed in Newcastle over the weekend on their attitudes to shopping hours. It's part of a nationwide campaign by the Concerned Citizens Association of Australia to get extended trading hours reduced. But it wasn't all good news for the association. 9 out of 10 Novocastrians are in favour of Saturday trading, and 3/4 supported shops staying open past 6 p.m. But the association was heartened by 7 out of 10 people opposed to trading after midnight, and even more against round-the-clock trading. Those against extended trading gave 3 main reasons: its effect on small business, disruption to families, and the inconvenience of having to work odd hours. The association will interview more shoppers in Newcastle this weekend. Richard O'Leary, NBN News.
He may have made history yesterday, but today Andrew Johns was back to building a career off the field. The 19-year-old played an instrumental role in bursting the bubble for South Sydney. He had a hand in almost everything that resulted in points for the Knights in their 43-14 flogging of the Rabbitohs. It was his first run on start with the Knights, his chance coming after Matthew Rodwell was crippled with a knee injury, and Jason Martin still recovering from shoulder surgery.
I probably would have liked to come into first grade different circumstances, like pushing my way through with good performances in reserve grade. But you take opportunities when they come and don't let them pass.
But Johns was knocking on the door anyway. Last year he became the first ever Knight to score over 300 points in a season, and the opportunity to play alongside older brother Matthew provides a natural chemistry.
If you live with someone for 19 years, 20 years, you know what they do in and out of their, what they play football and what they do in real life. So I just sort of know which way he steps, when he's going to run, and that's I just follow him.
And although his performance has made him an instant league identity, Johns is keeping his feet firmly on the ground, happier to see his clients are satisfied than feeding his ego.
Probably last year I was a bit guilty of living a bit of the good life. I was living away from home. I was having a good time. But now, I'm working, and here at Mr. Sports, they're really good. They're learning it with me. They let me go for training, and it's keeping me active, both physically and mentally.
And after just one game, the Knights' forward pack is already being feared. Not only did they score tries, but they eliminated a nagging problem, the dropsies. For 9 consecutive sets of 6, the Knights held onto the ball.
We're not getting too carried away because we're still improving. We're a very young side, and like 6 or 7 of those blokes have only played a handful of first grade games, so we're still improving, and it's just, I suppose, give more credit to the win that we had yesterday.
Darren Curtis, NBN News.
A week ago, Ron Dean Wilcox was appointed by the directors of Confetti's and the Associated Chicago Bar and Grill because of money problems caused by a blowout in establishment costs and lower than hoped for trading figures since opening in December. Unsecured creditors are owed $350,000 and have little chance of realising anything unless the business improves. That hope was dealt a severe blow last Friday night when torrential rain penetrated the roof, inundated the dance floor, destroyed the sound system, ruined carpet and disabled the computerised bar tills. The administrator said today that insurers won't forward funds needed for repairs until the roof is fixed, which is not expected to happen until next week. This means the club won't be able to fulfil its Surffest commitments under a sponsorship deal, adding Surffest organisers to the already lengthy list of unsecured creditors.
It's not the first time Darren Stewart has packed up and taken his talents overseas. Last year he played the Australian off-season in Malaysia and became one of the most popular players in the league through his on-field aggression and kicking distance. While the money's good, it wasn't such an easy decision to sign on again this year. He recently became a father and is feeling pretty comfortable after signing a long-term contract with the Breakers. Darren, last time you came home with a knee injury, is that still in the back of your mind?
It still is, obviously. I've had a few problems the way I play. I don't take a backward step to too many people, and maybe that's a wrong thing to do, but I won't change that, and hopefully this time I won't be injured.
Breakers management is also aware of the injury risks but are allowing him to finish the season early in lieu of paying him outstanding match fees. And he will definitely earn his money. The Malaysians play 3 games a week and train twice a day on off days.
2 sessions tomorrow and then another 2 the next day, so hopefully the plane ride will be all right.
The toughest part of the trip so far, though, has been leaving fiancée Jenny and 4-week-old son Matthew. But the separation won't be too long. Jenny and Matthew fly out next week to also spend the next 6 months in Malaysia.
The agreement cements a 12-year working relationship between drug company Cortex and the Newcastle University-based team.
Our group provides the research and development for this pharmaceutical group to develop either new vaccines for developing protection against infections in the lung or for developing new tests by taking saliva instead of blood.
Basically, Cortex contributes $1 million a year to Newcastle research. In return, it gets the commercial rights to any product or vaccine developed. It's a relationship which Professor Rob Clancy says has many benefits.
We have a very well-equipped laboratory, well-funded research, and a lot of our basic research is linked to the applied research. So we have opportunities for PhD students, some of our own undergraduate medical students.
The Institute of Mucosal Immunology would probably exist without Cortex's involvement, but it would be on a shoestring budget, which Professor Clancy says gets tighter each year. With Cortex's help, the Newcastle team is making valuable medical breakthroughs.
We started off with one you might remember called Bronchostat, which is still around, and now we're developing a follow-up from that called Pseudostat, which is mainly for people with cystic fibrosis. We've also developed a diagnostic test for patients who might have peptic ulcers.
This evening's meeting is the first held by the full 10-member group since it was expanded to include representatives of Newcastle Trades Council, industry and the 3 tiers of government. The aim of the committee is to secure the Minehunter shipbuilding project for Newcastle. Success will have benefits to industry across New South Wales, according to Chairman Ian Armstrong.
For New South Wales, it's one of those sports which has been left behind as far as facilities is concerned. It'd be like playing rugby league on a gravel pit to diving out in the open when it's cold and it's wet and it's windy and nothing suits.
It's been used as a quarry, an army jungle training camp and more recently as an illegal dump site. But its next assignment will harness its natural beauty, the sun, sand and surf. BHP revealed plans today to restore it into what it calls a $200 million environmentally friendly development. 200 of the 500 hectares of the Belmont Sands will be transformed into urban and tourist areas with the intention of generating more investment, attract more people and produce more jobs. But BHP says it hasn't sacrificed the environment for profit.
There are environmental dangers, but council staff have been working very closely with us on that already and have helped us to identify what those concerns are.
92 hectares of existing wetlands will be preserved, with another 38 hectares added. 4.2 kilometres of beach will be open to the public for the first time in nearly 70 years. That's a quarter of the Lake Macquarie area's ocean beaches. BHP has called for public submissions on the proposal before it goes to council next month. If it gets approval, work could start within 12 months and the old wasteland transformed into prime real estate by the year 2000.
I think it will look a very attractive, desirable area to live, work and play.
Richard O'Leary, NBN News.
Nearly 300 miners and sponsors teed off for today's 18 holes. While green fees went towards the rescue helicopter service, the main accent was social. Set up around a 4-man Ambrose system, everybody realised they weren't playing for sheep stations, so the pressure was minimal. But still, some golfers weren't too keen to give away their match secrets. At one stage, players were so relaxed on the back nine, the cameraman was a little nervous. It's the third year the tournament has been held at Cessnock, but this is the first time Queensland miners have made the trip south for the comp. On the bowls rink, the triples teams were playing for some pretty handy prize money. $900 to the winning team, but there's already talk the winners will be pressured into donating it back to charity. Tomorrow, the Children's Leukaemia Research Fund will be the beneficiary. Daniel Banks was the first off the tower this morning and set the precedent for the day. The 17-year-old Sydney sider is the current State Open champ and a hot favourite for this year's Commonwealth Games squad. His efforts today won him the Most Outstanding Diver of the Meet award. Maitland's Christian Brooker isn't far behind, finishing third in today's Open section. Some of the boys had only been diving for 6 weeks prior to the state championships, and coaches are confident with proper training they could all be medalists. Many of the Newcastle girls, though, are giving diving away despite their good results. Broadmeadows' Desma Kolaris is one of them. Despite finishing third in the Opens, today was her last dive. She now intends to take up water polo.
A lot of kids will give it away because they just get too cold, you know, if you're asked to train in conditions which are totally unsuitable for diving. And that's where the more indoor facilities we get, the more heated facilities we get, the more divers will come out.
14-year-old Alison Woodbridge from Whitebridge isn't contemplating retirement after winning selection to compete at the Australian All-Schools Championships. The Aussie titles are a chance for state and private schools to match up, and just winning selection to compete is highly regarded.
A 1,000 metal workers gathered at the Newcastle Sports Ground to hear the report before returning to work after lunch. It's been a 7-year restructuring process, interrupted late last year when employers indicated they did not want mandatory standards, preferring to leave the decision to individual employers. The union then listed the dispute with the Industrial Relations Commission.
It was with that threat of industrial action that the employers finally woke up to the fact that national enforceability of the standards was the only way forward to have a progressive and successful metal industry in this country.
The system will mean that a worker in the Hunter, for instance, can be assured of training which will be recognised Australia-wide, providing a career path within the metal industry.
It most certainly is, I believe, at long last, a sign of maturity on behalf of the employers in this industry, that to have a well-trained and highly paid workforce is the way to maintain a successful and viable manufacturing metal industry in this country.
The agreement will now be sent to the Industrial Commission for ratification, with implementation to begin in July and be fully integrated into the award during the following 12 months.
The Victorian Government is updating its trams to one-person operation, and Ganninans will modify the entire fleet. Work on the 470 trams will begin later this month and will take about 2 years. But the work won't be done at the Broadmeadow plant.
But the core part of that project will be the engineering expertise used to develop the changes, to change from the current setup on the trams to single driver operation. That work will be done in Newcastle.
Company Chief John Fitzgerald says although the $14.2 million contract is not their largest, it's helping to secure work after the lucrative Tangara project.
To do that, you must have a strong base domestically and have a base you can bring people and show them what you're capable of doing and maintain an ability to do world-class products. Thus our engineering skills at Broadmeadow.
In a move to support the company's manpower with technical expertise, parent company Howard Smith today announced a new chair in mechanical engineering at Newcastle University. The $50,000 annual grant will help fund research and the development of technology.
Ganninan's future lies in technology, in doing things better and smarter than its competition. So we're certainly looking to increase our brain power.
As a 19-year-old, Jennings made his National League debut for Sydney Olympic. Tomorrow night, at age 34, he will play his home ground swan song against Melbourne Knights.
A combination of a few factors. Age came into it a little bit. I could feel myself slipping slightly because I've set myself pretty high standards during the game, and if I don't live up to those standards, you know, it plays on me a little bit. Second factor was the pressure involved with being a player coach and the amount of time I needed to do sort of both jobs. Another factor is my involvement in a full-time tech course, early childhood course at Belmont. And finally, family commitments. It's only recently I've found out that I've got a wife and 3 children.
It will bring to an end a long and illustrious career in the round ball game. Jennings' last appearance for the Breakers will be an away game against Brisbane on Sunday week, marking his 350th in the NSL. Playing out his last season for the Breakers is a fitting end for the towering fullback.
It's taken me 16 years to get here. I think back to last season where I couldn't even get a game at the club. I was overjoyed to be asked to play this year, and then all of a sudden I've ended up coaching, so I've gone the full circle. And needless to say, I was the first one picked every game.
However, like a true sportsman, he'll never really hang up his boots. Jennings will continue to play in the State Super League for Adamstown. Jason Neuenhoff, NBN News.
The last time these two sides met, the Central Coast escaped with a first round win by the skin of their teeth and surprised everyone by going on to win the country championship. Newcastle didn't take the loss easily and were keen to repay some debts. Tim Perrin laid a pretty solid hit on early in the game and ended up having a little chat with the ref. The Coasties finished off the even up not long after. Former Parramatta star Brian Jackson hasn't lost any of his Winfield Cup flair, scoring first points. The Coasties had control of the first half but became their own worst enemy, dropping the ball within centimetres of the line or losing possession through forward passes. Newcastle new boy Gavin Cook signalled he'll be a threat locally this year, chasing down his own chip to level the scores. Coaches from both sides will now name their proper starting lineups next week. And last night, round 3 of the Newcastle pre-season continued. Curry, West, Cessnock, South and Lakes all winners.
Newcastle Council has told the Sinbad's receiver that it wants the premises back to install a new manager and institute a broader mix of commercial activities on the wharf. The receiver, Greg Lloyd of Ernst & Young, has taken the council to court, claiming Sinbad's cannot be evicted because it has a lease to operate there for another 15 years. At the end of this month, the court will decide who is right. But in the meantime, council manager Bill Grant has acted.
We wouldn't just close it down. We would get a manager in, the same as the receiver, and try and maintain it exactly as it is with as many of the existing staff as possible.
The receiver claimed today that Mr Grant's comments are in contempt of court, but the council manager is unfazed.
Well, that's his opinion.
The General Manager says the council has been patient and considerate in its dealings with the receiver, but that only one proposal had been put forward in the 9 months of Mr Lloyd's administration, and that was unacceptable on both economic and community interest grounds.
We must think of the best interests of the community, and that's an outstanding building and location which should be maximised for the best use of the community.
It's taken a few days to get to Swansea for this family from North Queensland, but they weren't the first to arrive at one of the area's caravan parks. By tomorrow night, any available space in the parks will be covered with tents, and it will stay that way for a week. Newcastle and Lake Macquarie motels can't handle the demand, and people heading to the titles have been forced to stay as far west as Cessnock and Raymond Terrace in the north. Anyone who was late booking is now looking towards North Sydney. Just getting the people here has Aero Pelican booked solidly. For the next week there is barely a seat available from Sydney, and hire car companies have almost every minibus available in the country here. Normally 1 or 2 are hired midweek. Thrifty alone is renting about 15 a day. Buses are arriving nearly every hour and are put straight back onto the road. The influx of cars will also mean a change in the local traffic. Cars will be allowed to park along the Pacific Highway and in reserved areas, but police have warned they won't be lenient.
There'll be sufficient parking area for all people, so no, they can't park on medium streets.
If you get caught, what's the result?
Well, unfortunately, the old ticket will be written out, I suppose.
At the beach, 2 weeks of scaffold construction is almost complete. A workforce of 50 club members is now adding the finishing touches. And although the carnival will tie up plenty of beach space, blacksmiths won't be off limits for public swimming.
We have fully guarded areas on the beach. They will be at the southern and northern end of the beach, and we'll have 2 lifeguard patrols on it for all time.
The whole area has undergone a spruce up from murals to palm trees. It's hoped it will impress officials enough to award the titles to Swansea again in 3 years.
Learning a lesson from the heavy rain the commencement ceremony suffered, the school this time provided a marquee for the invited guests, and just as well too. When it came time to leave the relative comfort of the shelter and attack the ribbon, Lady Mayoress Margaret McNaughton demonstrated just what a trooper she is. And she didn't even stop smiling after finding that undoing the knot wasn't what was needed to do the deed. Inside, finally, the guests were shown just how the $85,000 invested in Stage 1 was spent. The 10-metre by 5-metre gas-heated pool in its iron building will give the 22 pupils, who are usually confined to wheelchairs, the chance to engage in a variety of activities relaxed by the warm water. They also learn swimming and water safety, and it gives them an opportunity to socialise as well. Financial support for the project came from various service clubs, local businesses and the general community. Work's now underway on Stage 2. Another $70,000 must be raised for change rooms, a reception area and a kitchen.
Every week, the John Hunter's cardiac surgery unit performs 8 heart operations. When patients undergo surgery, they often have to spend long periods in recovery. But now that waiting time will be reduced with the help of new equipment. At a cost of $8,000, 2 machines have been donated to the cardiac unit by the Newcastle branch of the Open Heart Association. A pulse oximeter measures oxygen in the blood and helps monitor progress after surgery. The other helps patients breathe.
We're under a lot of pressure to get patients through here, and those sorts of equipment can help us get people out of hospital on day 5 or 6 as opposed to day 8 or 9.
Meanwhile, the James Fletcher has become one of only 4 mental health hospitals in Australia to gain a 3-year accreditation rating. To qualify, the hospital and its services had to meet strict regulations set by the Australian Council on Healthcare Standards.
It means that there's a recognition by our peers that the standard of service at this hospital and this service is really recognised by professional groups that set a high standard on the service delivery.
In a freak accident, a 10-year-old boy was run over after alighting from a school bus at Seaham. Police believe the boy's school bag caught on the side of the moving bus, pulling him under the vehicle. He was dragged about 50 metres before the driver was alerted. The rescue helicopter flew the boy with serious head injuries to Newcastle's John Hunter Hospital. In Spears Point, 3 people, including a 37-year-old pregnant woman, were injured in a collision between 2 vans on the corner of Albert and Nord Streets. One of the vans careened into a pole, bringing down power lines and blacking out nearby homes. Ambulances took the 3 injured people to the John Hunter Hospital. And on the Pacific Highway, a truck tipped onto its side on the northern approach to the Karua Bridge. The driver escaped injury and police were able to keep traffic moving around the scene.